Let's get ready to rumble.
Yes, we're back. Here we go, episode 88 of the Hibs Ramble. And for those that are watching on YouTube, no, we are not joined by Liam, Ryan, or Mark this evening. We have two hugely more handsome men, huge improvements. We've got Billy and Callum joining us this evening, but we've also got Craig as well. So there is a familiar face to an extent. Billy, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, not too bad. Other than a potential broken toe, I'm doing okay.
Callum, you all right?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Craig, what's happening?
I'm good, mate. Thought I'd make my monthly appearance.
I said familiar. I was probably being a bit polite, but we move on. A little bit of a different one for you all this evening. I asked the gents to look back quite a while. We're not just looking back at the weekend's game. We're going a little bit further back than that. We're carrying on the theme from last week's episode, where Liam and Tony and I spoke about 21st century Hibs matches and certain individual players. This time we're digging in a little bit deeper, and we're going to, as a collective, agree on a best 21st century Hibs starting 11. So I set the lads with a task of selecting their own team, which we're going to go through individually. We'll talk about players, just give us a little bit of an opportunity to reminisce on when Hibs were actually decent and had proper decent footballers, rather than some of the mess that we've got on the pitch at the moment. That is the views of Shaun Corrigan, not the views of the Hibs Ramble. And so how this is going to work this evening is I sent a list to the boys for each position. I will name the players that were up for selection, and basically we'll work our way through the start 11, and what we'll do at the end, we'll end up agreeing on a final 11 and then a manager to oversee said starting 11. We will be looking back on the weekend's match as well. It'd be rude not to consider in, to an extent, the level of performance that we got, and we'll obviously be looking ahead as well, but that's more towards the end. So if you don't care about 21st century Hibs, you don't care about good times, then you can fast forward right to the end, but you're definitely going to miss out on some good content. Right, we'll get right into it, boys. Billy, before we talk about goalkeepers, I want to know what your formation was.
I am going for my Football Manager Classic formation of a 4-3-3.
Callum?
It was a swither between a 4-4-2 and a 4-3-3, but it did end up being the 4-3-3 as well.
Craig?
I think
We're still deciding.
do you know what? I'm actually going to go 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going 4-4-2.
Classic Mike Bassett.
Yeah. Well,
So
actually, do you know what? The way it could set out would be more like a diamond.
okay, I'll allow it.
So
The boys might put up a bit of a fight when we agree on the formation at the end, but that's for later on. So lads, the goalkeepers that were up for nomination, you could probably argue one or two should not be in there, but we tried to, with each of our categories, get players from different eras, different teams, or maybe just players that we liked having at the club. So Nick Colgan, Graham Stack, Conrad Logan, Ofer Marciano, and Adam Bogdan in there. Now, I did only just chuck Graham Stack in there just because he seemed like a great laugh when he was at the club, not necessarily because of his ability. So, Billy, who did you have in goals?
I was between two. I was between Rocky, and I was between. They'll go Rocky or Nick Colgan. That was my two. You know what? I'm going to go for Marciano. Marciano is my pick.
Callum?
I think one of the things I'm probably going to do on a lot of these is contradict myself on the player that I think is the best, or if you go around the sort of romance of the cup, both cups, I suppose. But I ended up Marciano as well.
Big.
Clean sweep, Rocky for me as well. I think it was close though with Colgan. I think Colgan set a clean sheet record that season. We finished third under McLeish. I could be talking shite, but it was Marciano for me. We'd craved a proper number one for so long, a commanding number one, and I get the romance around like Conrad Logan, but like that was just one game. I know
For me,
that
it was
game.
For me, it was a lot of recency biased as well, because like Marciano's quite recent, where Nick Colgan was when we were all teenagers, and I can't actually remember like a standout game.
Speak for yourself. I was only 10.
Sorry, guys. Well, I was a young teenager, and I can't actually remember a standout game where I thought Colgan really, really saved us. But I can think at the top of my head quite a few for Marciano, so that's what swayed it for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's Colgan, my memory as well, although I was probably older than Ollie is, was he was more of a solid goalie, whereas Marciano, just some of the saves he made were just, he had absolutely no right to make. Just some phenomenal shot stopping.
Aye, but his kicking was shy though.
And then you can get a good goalie that can kick well and then no save anything, as we've seen more recently.
No, I think that's more a dig at the whole LAU and constant goals and assists, but no tracky backy.
Yeah.
Very, very topical this evening, Craig. I'm sure that's not the last time either. I want to get your thoughts on Nick Colgan, Callum, just a little bit more from you as well. And if you're looking back, which is obviously what we're doing, Billy's obviously spoke about the quality that he had. Just for the people that probably wouldn't even know the name, and I say that for, you're talking like 15, 16, 17-year-olds nowadays, in comparison to Marciano, just how close or how good was Nick in comparison to Marciano? Like you said, you've chose Marciano, but
as I say, I think really close. He was an all-round goalie. You know, he was every part of his game was solid. We're talking about Marciano's strengths being his shot stopping was phenomenal, but I think Colgan was, and I suppose the other thing as well, back then it wasn't as important to play it with your feet like you do now. Wasn't a big part of the game, so it didn't really matter. So you probably can't even really comment on if his footwork was good, because that's not how any teams didn't really play out from the back like that. So it didn't really matter. But yeah, he was just more of an all-round goalie and really dependable.
Craig, what was your thoughts on Adam Bogdan when he was at the club? Because the reason I ask is I felt at the time that, I mean, when he joined, I was a bit iffy because of some of the clangers that he potentially had prior to coming to us, and he didn't really come with a great name. But when he played for us, he was very solid, good shot stopper, and definitely like saved us or gained us a lot of points as well at times when he did play. Do you think it was maybe right keeper, wrong time, considering him and Marciano were just there at the same time?
Definitely. I think we went through a weird phase with him where when Bogdan started to get a run in the team, he had an injury and Rocky would come back in, and then Rocky would get a run and then he would get injured and Bogdan would come back in. But it's probably, you probably look at it, it's almost similar to what probably Hearts have got now with Gordon and Xander Clark. Like most teams anywhere in professional football, I think, have got their outright standout number one and then a dependable backup that can jump in as and when needed. Probably save for what the now, I don't know, Arsenal with Raya and Ramsdale. Most other teams didn't necessarily have two outright number ones at the same time. So no, it was definitely right keeper, wrong time. He was both of them were prone to clangers, obviously, but then if they weren't prone to clangers, they wouldn't be at Hibs. I hate using that phrase, but it's true. But I know they were. For me, it was still edge at Marciano though. Like Callum says, his shot stopping at times was unbelievable. There's one that sticks out. It's either Dundee or St Mirren. I can't remember exactly what one it is. But it's like a shot from maybe about 9 yards out and it's leathered into the bottom corner. And he gets down with a full hand and manages to put it out for a throw. Still one of the best I've seen live in person. But that was a good time with my two actual decent keepers going for it rather than the shite that we've normally had over the last 20 years or so.
It could be worse. You could have a goalkeeper in school. Those were the days.
I think what we're probably going to find out as we're going through this is there's going to be certain players that are just non-negotiable. And for me, Marciano would be that. I would say there's maybe 5 at most, maybe even 6 that are probably non-negotiable and are probably in all 4 of our teams. So it'll be interesting to see if that does transition like that. So we'll move on to right back, and we'll move on to left back. So we'll do the two at the same time. So a right back, we had none other than Ulysses de la Cruz, Stephen Whittaker, David Gray, and left back Ulrich Larsson for those older listeners, David Murphy, Lou Stevenson, and just for more recency bias, Josh Doig. So, Billy, who did you have as your fullbacks? All 4 of you had a back 4. I personally would have actually went with a 5, 3-5-2, but that's another conversation. So, Billy, who were your fullbacks?
I've gone for Stephen Whittaker and David Murphy. Both played in the same team together and were just absolutely outstanding to watch. Great at delivering, crossing the balls in, great defending, great going forward, just exactly what you want for your fullbacks. And I know the boys are going to agree on this, but David Murphy had probably the best first touch I've seen on any footballer.
Yeah, I think that Craig's said that about 5 or 6 times on this podcast as well, and I completely echo it. Would I be right to assume that you two gents have got the same, or is Lewis Stevenson snuck in there, David Gray snuck in there?
Yeah, I've actually. Sorry, Craig. I went for Gray. I nearly went for Whittaker. I always remember Whittaker in his first spell at the club was a bit. He was great going forward. He was sometimes a bit ropey defending as a right back, and I just think, as I said, I was probably going to contradict myself throughout with sort of the whole Scottish Cup thing. But to me, it's hard to not have Gray in there. You know, cup winning captain. He done it in the Premier League as well as the Championship. He scored some massive goals for us in the Scottish Cup and in Europe as well. So yeah, that's why I went for Gray.
And then Craig, you had those two, aye.
Yeah, Gray and Murphy. Gray for me was more. It was close with Whittaker. Like Callum says, I remember Whittaker in his first spell being great going forward, but a bit suspect defensively, and probably one of the worst throwing takers we've ever seen. But for me, Gray, because he, like when you look back at what it symbolised, like he was the first signing of that Stubbs era,
Right,
and can you go back and you see tweets like first signings a Burton Albion reject, haha. And then obviously the romance of the cup. So no so much about the cup. And I know when you look at his actual tenure at Hibs as a player, he didn't play anywhere near the level of games that he did due to the fact that he was more often than not injured. But I just think for me it's what he symbolised throughout that sort of 2014 to 2018 period at the club when we went for Stubbs to Lennon, and then the sort of journey that Hibs went on through that 4 or 5 year period. And Murphy for me was a non-negotiable. Like he was different gravy. Like when you're talking, if you want to talk romance, you'd pick Lewis.
Yep.
But if you're talking purely technically as a football player, Murphy's probably one of the best I've ever seen at Hibs. He was ridiculous. And another one
could you use that argument for the right side of the pitch then? Because you could probably argue that you've used more of the romance side of it with David Gray rather than Whittaker from an ability perspective.
Nah, because I think Gray, it's not just about the romance with Gray, it's about what he actually signified as a player as well. Like you say, he was a captain when he became captain. He would have. You hear the cliche that he would run through brick walls, but he genuinely would have ran through a brick wall for Hibs. And I think when you look back, when you see that he scored that goal, the goal against Brøndby, the goal against Tripolis in the Cup, in the Europa League qualifiers as well, the goal against Rangers and the 4-0 scalping, like he's at the forefront of, a lot of our big moments over the past, and like I say, in that sort of 4-year period, whereas Whittaker, whilst he was really good technically, we never seen the best of him at Hibs. He went on to Rangers where he really kicked on another gear. Whereas Gray, we seen that build up and then the peak. Same with Murphy. I don't think Murphy ever really hit the same heights when he left Hibs. But Gray and Murphy for me.
I would have had Whittaker in there, Billy, just to let you know. I would have had your back, but obviously, for the sake of what we're doing this evening, the boys have outvoted you there. So we've got Gray and Murphy right and left back. Takes us into our centre halves. Can I be right in assuming that there's a non-negotiable in here in Frank Sawsey just before we go any further?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Which
Right,
is tough because I think Sawsey's a bit of a cheeky put in there because he signed in 99, sorry.
Yeah.
And he came and he started as a centre midfielder and he played most of his Hibs career at centre mid, I would say.
He also kind of naturally fell further back the pitch as well and ended up being a sweeper and stuff like that as well. So I think when I was putting the list together, and I'll go through the list of what I sent you in a second, I've tried to avoid including players like Latape and Sawsey for obvious reasons because they were country miles ahead of any other players that we've had at the club. But when we're talking about Hibs all time, well, not even all time, just 21st century, they're still up there. They're still played for the club at that time. The 6-2 was within the time period that we're talking about, so we can't not include them. As for the rest of the players that we sent over, Ian Murray, Gary Caldwell, Chris Hogg, very underrated in my opinion, Rob Jones, Paul Hanlon, Sol Bamba, Darren McGregor, Effie Ambrose, Ryan Porteous. Billy, who was your pairing in there with Sawsey?
Well, growing up, one of my favourite players was Ian Murray, but I've not actually selected him in this one. I've went for a more recent player, and it was Effie Ambrose. And the reason I've gone for Effie is he was just chaos to watch in the best possible sense. And it's the reason you go and watch football is to see players like him. You don't know what he's going to do. He could have moments of sheer brilliance and moments of madness, but it was exciting, and it's exactly like the type of football I wanted to watch. And the influence he had on Ryan Porteous as well just shows the type of player that he was. We had no right to have Effie Ambrose. I don't know how we ended up with him, but I enjoyed every moment of his time at Hibs.
His debut just still sits well with me in regards to the Dundee United. It was Dundee United away, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe it!" And I'm like, "No, this is going to be class. This is going to be entertaining." And he went. Was it a 50-50 he went in for? But then he took it round the boy, and then after that he just technically, like you said, Billy, he streaks ahead of some of the other defenders that we've had, and yeah, no right to have him, I think. And it was a shame that we didn't have him for a wee bit longer, I think. Callum, who have you got in there paired alongside Sawsey?
Thought this was tough. I think both will agree that there's a number of people that could have been picked here. Hanlon, I think, deserves a shout. Craig will laugh. Sol Bamba for me was one of my favourites. He ended up at my wedding reception and presented me with a shirt, me and my wife with a Hibs shirt at my wedding reception. So I nearly had to go for him for that reason. Darren McGregor, just Mr. Hibs, but I ended up going for Rob Jones.
Callum, I'm with you on that train, by the way.
There he is.
With you on that one.
Absolutely love Big Sol. But yeah, went for Rob Jones. I just moved back from England in 2004, so that sort of 2004 up to the CIS Cup was when I first had a season ticket again, and Rob Jones was just the epitome of a leader for me. Just an absolute man mountain, dominant in the air, leader. He scored, I think, did he not score, Craig's the man for this, did he not score 10 goals in his first season for us, for as a centre half?
Wouldn't he have been far off that,
which was just unbelievable. And obviously he got the goals in the CIS Cup against Hearts, and then the famous picture, he did it in the snow at Hampden. So yeah, just his leadership. I think a leader like that in the team now would be appreciated. So yeah, I went for Rob.
Craig, what about you?
It's tough, but I went for Darren McGregor. Maybe a wee bit more romance as well with Daz, given obviously I don't think many people know about his journey that he worked in exile till he was 25. And,
he's never mentioned it.
Aye, but it was just, when you look at where he went from to where he got to, all the sort of trials and tribulations, going through setback after setback, all the way down to the juniors, coming back up. He probably thought his peak was getting to sign for Rangers. And then just he's one of those, he's a proper throwback centre half, in that he's just, but there's that gif that goes about when he absolutely leathers Don Cowie at Tynecastle and he runs away like he's celebrating a goal. I know he's putting his hand up to make it say as if I've not touched him, but just the way it makes it look at. And I just think that when I look at Hibs teams that I enjoyed watching, obviously everybody enjoys that silky, the touch, like the drive of somebody like Scott Brown in his early days, John McGinn, the flair of somebody like Zamama or whatever, the ball playing centre half that Porch has started. But then there's also that element of you just love a rugged, meat and totty centre half. And I just think that when you couple that with, it was probably, we probably don't realise how lucky we were to have a unit that we did back then with Fontaine, McGregor, Hanlon, Gray, Stevenson, like boys that would just run through, all of them would run through a brick wall. But for me, McGregor's the one that is head and shoulders above the rest, just because he, like I say, he's a proper meat and totties defender, like love defending.
Yeah,
it's funny. You touched on, you mentioned Ryan Porteous there as well. Sorry, Callum, and so did Billy. Do you think Ryan coming through couldn't have really asked for a better time to come through? So like you're learning the right bits off of different players. So you've still got Paul Hanlon, you've still got like leadership qualities off David Gray, Lewis Stevenson, and then you've got Effie Ambrose and Darren McGregor and stuff like that. You mix all of them in together and you're getting a perfect centre half, that's for sure. Callum, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, Craig talking about the story of Darren McGregor as well, the way he signed for Hibs as well, the fact that Warburton had told him he wasn't going to feature really for Rangers, and then he told Rangers that he was going to move to, I think it was Kilmarnock, that he told them he was getting a move to, so they released him and signed for us the next day. He would never have ever been allowed to sign for us at that time.
And he scored the goal that started the journey off. So,
of course, yeah.
And am I right in saying as well?
Because we had that whole the Scott Allen saga and stuff like that as well. So they would have never allowed that. Never.
Nah.
Did he not score the double that won us the championship as well?
I think so. Aye.
Was it at home against Queen of the South?
Queen of the South, I think. 4-1.
That was the day I got engaged. I was in Tokyo. I remember waking up and seeing, because David Gray scored as well, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Aye. Good 48 hours that was, that's for sure. Right, we're going to have to narrow that down to one. But before we get into that, see if we didn't include Sozzy, just very, very quickly, who would you have paired? Because this might allow us to decide on who's going to pair Sozzy. But who would you have if you didn't have Sozzy in there? Who would you have paired alongside Jones, Ambrose, McGregor?
I'll probably go Jones, to be fair.
I'd love to say Bamba just for the chaos of Ambrose and Bamba at the back.
It would be between McGregor and Ambrose probably. Probably more McGregor.
Cal, you've not helped me in any way, shape, or form, by the way, because I was hoping for you selecting a second one. I was hoping like I would get a unanimous one, and then that would be the most votes, and then that would then take us into the pairing for Sozzy. So I'll let you scrap between yourselves and agree who's going to be the centre half pairing alongside Sozzy.
To be honest with you, I would take any of the three that we've picked, if I'm totally honest. So if someone wants to fight for theirs big time, I don't mind. I would take any of the three.
Let's go for McGregor.
There we go.
Didn't even need to open your trap, Craig.
No. Easy peasy.
Right. We'll move on to midfield now. Now, Craig, you touched on the fact that yours are 4-4-2, but more of a diamond. So I'm going to get your 4 off you first, and then I'll get the 3 off the other 2 gents as well. Now, the list that I sent you, very, very wide range of players. I'm very intrigued to see if he's went for balance or if he's just went out for just vibes. So Matty Jack, Grant Brebner, Russell Latipe, Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson, Boozy Samama, Liam Miller, Scott Allen, Dylan McGeoch, John McGinn, Marvin Bartley, Liam Henderson, and Joe Newell. Craig, what 4 did you have in there as a diamond?
So initially, right, I was going with the 3, and I had Brown, Latipe, and Thompson. So no McGinn, no Scott Allen, and then I was kind of umming and ahhing with my strikers with the 3, and then obviously just as we started, I thought I'd narrow it that I couldn't pick a striker, but I could easily drop a striker for the 2 extra midfielders. So my midfielders are Scott Brown, Russell Latipe, John McGinn, and Scott Allen.
Brown, Latipe, what was the last 2, sorry?
McGinn and Scott Allen.
So Thompson got pumped in, did he?
Yeah.
To be fair though, Craig, you would be right in what you're saying. If you were to pick a 3 and you had Brown, Thompson, and Latipe, I don't think there would be a single person out there that could probably disagree with that. When you're talking about ability, anyway.
McGinn or Thompson, and the only reason, and I'll tell you why, right? The only reason I swithered with McGinn is because we was here for 3 years and it was 2 in the Championship, 1 in the Premier League. That's the only reason. But
yep.
I couldn't know, could I? Like, sorry, that's my 4. Brown, Latipe.
It's definitely not. It's not got any lively shape to it, and it is definitely just all there for vibes. And I'm here for it. That's for sure. Billy, Callum, can I be again right in assuming that Latipe's in there as one of your 3?
Yeah, like Sozzy, that's a given. Yeah.
Interesting, Billy. Right. Well, I'm going to park that for a second, and I'm going to come back to that because you better have a good defence for why Russell Latipe's not in there. However, Callum, what was your other 2?
So Russell Latipe, Scott Brown. I think he's probably another one of the non-negotiables, if I'm honest. And then I had to go John McGinn. I would probably say that McGinn's my all-time favourite Hibs midfielder. He was a good player when he came to us, and he just got better and better season on season. He was hardly ever injured. I think he must have played about 120 games for us in 3 seasons. And he's just the absolute textbook box-to-box midfielder. I know McGeoch you've got in there, and there was a big argument in that last season that there was a few people that said that McGeoch was the better of the 2, and he was maybe slightly more cultured, but McGinn was just always going to be the harder to replace. I think when we knew that he was going, you knew that you were going to have to get 2 midfielders in to replace John McGinn. He scored massive goals in the League Cup semi-final away to Asteras, and yeah, it's great now to see him doing so well in the Premier League, knowing that he's come from us. But yeah, I just absolutely loved him again.
Right, Billy. Callum's gave you 2 or 3 minutes there. What are you saying?
So my 3, I went for John McGinn as well.
By the way, Dylan Levitt wasn't in that list, so you better not have pulled him out and put him in there.
Is Dylan Tate there?
He somehow managed to wangle Dylan Tate in.
If Jack Ross only stayed manager, he'd be a starter.
In League One.
No, the 3 I've gone for. Okay, so I've went with McGinn because I genuinely think that he was Mr. Hibs at the time. I know everyone's going to say Gray because of the cup win, but I think John McGinn was the gravy to that team. He was the one that brought everything into motion. And then I've gone for our version, not Celtic's version, but our version of Scott Brown, because he was a box-to-box attacking midfielder with absolute unbelievable pace, which he lost due to injury at Celtic. But when he was at Hibs, he was so explosive. But the person I've got alongside them isn't going to be Latipe. I've gone for Boozy. And just, I think, what a passer, a great passer of the ball, a great player, scored big goals. He scored, am I right in saying that he was the one that scored in the derby after Burley got sacked?
Yeah, the unbeatable one. Aye.
Yep. And I'm just such a likeable, a great guy to have in the team. And just a great time for watching football for me. And Boozy goes up there as one of the best midfielders for me that's ever been at Hibs.
I'm not going to go through all the other ones that we didn't mention for obvious reasons, because we could literally create a podcast on its own just about centre midfielders that we had. But we had Tony on last week, and he was waxing lyrical about Matty Jack as well, and he's still held in such a high regard. Callum, what was your thoughts on Matty when he was at the club?
Superb. Obviously, you're now 20 odd years since he came out. 98 he signed. It was well 3 or 4 years. And 20 odd years later, you're still talking about the Matty Jack role. You know, there's a reason why he was held in such high regard. And now quite a lot of Hibbies now visit his bar in Dusseldorf. I really liked him as a player, and I think if you're looking for balance in your team, and you'd be looking for him, or I know you've got Bartley in there as well, so you're probably looking at one of them in there. I think Bartley was probably the closest we got in recent years. He was brilliant for Hibs as well. He was the one that you knew would get the players up for it in the tunnel. Probably another guy that you'd like in the changing room now as well. So if you're looking for balance, it would probably be one of them.
And when we're looking at the team that we've put together so far, when I look at the midfield that you boys have picked, all three of you selected Brown. All three of you selected McGinn. So it leaves the other one up for potential debate. Billy, great shout having Boozy in there. Very cultured player. Tremendous player. Very, very technically gifted, that's for sure. And then Craig, you've got Latape in there, as did Callum, and you've got Scott Allen in there as well.
I think Scott Allen's probably the easy one to nudge aside. Yeah, I think as good as he like that 6 months under Lennon, man, fuck me, they were good. Him, McGinn and McGeoch were just incredible. And then that year, obviously the first year in the championship as well, but I can't use that because that's why I said I wasn't initially including McGinn. But do you know what? See, just to make it easier, I'll go with the 3 in midfield, so we all have a 4-3-3, so we can pick for that. So I'll take Scott Allen out of the equation for mine, and then I'll pick a different striker.
So Billy, are you happy to let this one slide and have a midfield 3, which isn't too bad? Is Scott Brown, John McGinn, and Russell Latape?
All I'm going to say is Boozy never let the team down in a cup final. Latape, on the other hand, went on the Boozy.
It was a Dwight York piss up away from being a proper legend, wasn't he?
Yep.
I just see the thing with Latape, right? I remember being at his debut. So his debut was October-ish. I'm quite good with this, but I've not got the fucking actual date nailed down. But we played Ayr away at Somerset Park 3 months into being in Division 1 at the time. I think we drew 3-3. Yogi scored twice. One of them was like a last minute to equalise. And I just remember, so I would have been, 6 at the time, 7 maybe, and just seeing this wee boy running about in the middle of the park. And it's mad to think that he went from Porto to that. And then again, we probably didn't realise how lucky we were to have that unit when we eventually got, like Callum says, 20 years later, we're still talking about Matty Jack, Sozzy, even pros like Fennick, Gary Smith, Mixu, Stuart Lovell, guys like that. You know what I mean? Like, technically wise, that's not a great side, but they were fucking hard to beat. But Latape for me was just, he was just fucking different level. Like, he was. I get the shout about Boozy, and I'm 100% on board with Boozy. Like, Boozy was quality. There's a story that Mowbray kept the friendly and all that we were playing hidden, because he knew that if somebody seen him, that they would snap him up, and he was really intent. He probably took that Brown Thompson pairing to the next level. But I Latape, man, fucking hell, what a player! That volley, the goal against Hearts on its own, like, deserves inclusion in any 11, I think.
It's mad looking at around that time though, where we signed players from. You know, bringing Latape in from the Portuguese Premier League, Sozzy in, like, unbelievable. I mean, I suppose even now we're looking going, oh, how did we get Melida from German? I know they've just been relegated, German second division. Players like that, but back then we were no wonder we were 17 million in debt, and you see that we were signing players for.
But no, I think Latipi for me. But the one that stands out head and shoulders is Scott Brown. Scott Brown for the age of what, 18 to when did he leave? Maybe 22, 23. I was honestly convinced that he would go on to play for one of the what would have been top four at the time in England, like an Arsenal, Man United or something. Just it was that the run where he sets up Sproul's second at Ibrox just lives.
Kevin Thompson mentions that on the interview we had with me.
It's rent free in my head, man. Lovenkrands is fucking rapid, and Scott Brown just.
It was his last two goals, the second and third goal that Brown played. But then also, I was having a wee, just when I was looking at stuff today, I was having a wee look at the goals to remember, and it was his goal in the 3-1 at Parkhead as well.
When he gets wiped out by, I think it's Jack McNamara cleans him out.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. To see him, I mean, obviously Strachan changed him big time when he went to Celtic, but I think you're talking about balance. I think if you got Scott Brown and McGinn in a midfield together, you don't need a defensive midfield. Those boys just go up and down the park all day, like the Hibs version of Scott Brown and John McGinn, and then let Latipi get on with it. It's frightening.
Moving on to attackers. Now, Hibs have obviously been known for having some rogue attackers in their time. Boys that didn't really listen, boys that didn't behave themselves. When I was putting this list together, it certainly complements that. We've had some very, very special strikers in our time, and some not so special strikers. But the ones that we're looking at this evening: Gary O'Connor, Mixu Patalainen, Derek Riordan, Stephen Fletcher, included Ivan Sproul in there in case, obviously, 4-3-3 wingers. Benji, Stokes, Griffiths, Cummins, Christian Doidge, Martin Boyle, and Kevin Nisbet. I did hum and haw, actually, Craig, about including Ellie Ewan in it, just to drop him in there for his goals and assists, because it might rattle certain individuals, but decided against it on this occasion. Now, I'm going to make another assumption. Could be wrong on this one, but one of my non-negotiables of the 5 or 6 that I felt were non-negotiable, which, by the way, hasn't proved to be the case, was Derek Riordan. Do any of you three not have him in your 11?
No, I've got Riordan.
I've got Riordan. Can I just say though as well, me and Craig both clocked Billy's face when you said Ivan Sproul. So
Sproul's and Billy's 1,000,000%, 1,000,000% Sproul is in
just saw his face light up when you said the name.
That's the only reason Billy went for a 4-3-3, just so he could get Ivan Sproul in. He's probably forced Christian Doidge out wide or something.
I felt that the strikers was probably going to be if I had like non-negotiables, like my non-negotiable was Lee Griffiths and Riordan. Like, I know we'll talk more about it, but I honestly think that 2012-13 season is the best individual season I've ever seen for a Hibs player, and I probably ever will. Griffiths was fucking ridiculous that season, absolutely ridiculous.
It was a cheap move. I mean, his free kicks, obviously, hat-trick against Falkirk. I know you spoke about that game last week quite in depth, but he was just, and it's just gotten that season we went into that cup final with a 60% fit Lee Griffiths. And
a 60% fit McPake as well. McPake was snookered that game too. Griffiths.
I know Celtic were really good that day, to be fair, but if you have him, he had a chance early on, I think, didn't he, Craig? That he would probably have scored if he was 100%. But yeah, as Craig says, just such a clean striker of the ball. Like the way, obviously, we saw him later on in his career, his goals against England and everything. But we'd seen that at Hibs, the free kicks that he took at Hibs. Just that season was unbelievable.
I think what was impressive about Griffiths as well was he wasn't very strong and he wasn't very tall, but he played the lone striker role like excellent.
Yeah. I know you're right.
At home against Celtic when he's up against Van Dijk. Van Dijk's trying to push him wide, and he just kind of gets an extra yard and takes it off. That just sums it up, playing the lone striker as well. I think that's probably one of the few times that we've beat Celtic since the turn of the century as well at home.
That thing
And-
with Griffiths as well, right? None of his goals were tap-ins.
Nah.
Like, if you think about that, so if you base it purely on that season alone, right, you've got, just off the top of my head, the one at away at Tannadice, where he rifles at top corner, for quite an acute angle. The right-footed volley against Dundee United at home. The free kick away at Tynecastle. His second against Falkirk in the semi-final. Like, you could just go on and on and on about Griffiths that season. And then obviously with Ireland, Ireland's like, I think Ireland's my favourite Hibs player ever.
There's a reoccurring theme here, and we touched on it, Callum. You said last week when we were speaking about some of the games, like players like this and games like that, like what we spoke last week as well. It all comes down to like big moments, and a lot of these players that we've selected, and a lot of the players that I sent through to you are players that have produced in big moments when I've needed them, and those are the memories that stick with you. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, we could be here all day talking about Riordan as well. Because you have now kind of both, and I say all of you actually because Craig's now done it as well, changed and went for a 4-3-3. Billy, I'm going to assume that Ivan Sproul, based on what Craig and Callum just said, is down your right hand side. Is that correct?
100%.
Right, I'll take your right sided players first, and then we'll have a look at what we've got on offer. Craig, who's on your right?
I think it is pure recency bias, but I was messaging Callum this morning about it and being like, when I was putting my team together, right, I thought about players that when I looked at a team sheet, okay, when you're standing on Easter Road before the days of social media, when the team's getting read out, you're looking for somebody's name. And I just remembered the way I felt before the game against Hearts when Boyle's name was on the team sheet. And he's not everybody's cup of tea. He never has been, he never will be. I mean, Callum and Billy will remember when we done Hibs Talk, it used to be a regular slating him because his end product for a long period of time was fucking woeful. But, you know, he's another one that's probably a bit more romance. You know, he'll probably be approaching a testimonial season pretty soon.
Well,
Save for the 6 months that he had in Saudi. But I remember that it was almost like when Riordan came back, and I remember when Riordan sold out Easter Road that day, and I remember when he came out to warm up. I'm sure it was Dundee United at home, Bamba's debut as well because he got sent off. And Riordan warmed up, and the stadium erupted when he ran past the West and up behind the goals at the famous Five End. And I felt similar to that with Boyle, and then obviously the sort of fairy tale with him. I know we didn't celebrate draws, but in that moment, that equaliser, and he's just, I think with Boyle as well, for me, it's where he, again, probably similar to McGregor, where he came from, where he was, and where he got to. And we've seen that happen in front of our eyes. He ended up, albeit for injuries, would have been at a World Cup, which when he signed 5-6 years earlier, you'd have thought you were absolutely fucking mental to think of that. So for a bit more romance than anything else, but I'll go with Boyle.
Callum, who's down your right hand side?
Funnily enough, after my conversation with Craig this morning, and he mentioned how players make you feel, I have also went with Boyle. Very similar. You know, his journey as a Hibs player when he's, you know, this raw low knee when he first came in. Obviously, everyone remembers him around the cup team, even though he didn't actually play in the cup final itself. But obviously, all the videos afterwards, I'm up the town and everything. So there's those memories. He's been such a character around the club. And you mentioned, Shaun, big moments, hat tricks in cup semi-finals, a double at Tynecastle for a derby win, and then obviously, as Craig touched on, that moment when he came back from Saudi, that just when it was announced, I think we'd heard rumours the night before that it was done, but the club wanted to keep it until the next morning, and then he was in the team and how you felt about him being in the team and stuff, and just unbelievable. So yeah, okay, he's maybe lost a little bit of his explosiveness now due to the terrible injuries he's had over the last few years, but you still, like even on Saturday, he was still a massive threat and a really important part of our team even now. So yeah, I went Boyle. But just touching on what Craig said as well about about these moments like when Riordan came back, Craig, and the same with him. The only other one that I can think of that was like that is Stokes' first game back after we won the cup, when he went down to, it was Blackburn he went to,
Blackburn,
and he came to us, and that when he came on as sub and the whole place was singing Stokes is on fire at Easter Road, that was absolutely brilliant. And that was the only other one I could think of that was like that.
Yeah, that Boyle one's like I say, especially in a day in an era where social media is so thingy. Obviously, the Riordan one, you knew it happened because of the transfer announcement, because I'm sure it was like him and Bamba was the last day of the transfer window.
It was late as well. It was really late.
And but there was that anticipation of, is he coming? Is he going to be playing? Is he in the squad? But the Boyle one was like, it's one of those rare moments when you actually feel something around a football stadium. You can feel that there's. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to describe. Like it, and I actually feel quite bad for Billy because he's absolutely been shafted here. Because I tell you what, like Sproul is probably similar to Boyle in terms of his journey, where he went from, he was a part-time player when he signed for us, and then he ended up being on the park when Northern Ireland beat England in such a short space of time. And his hat-trick holds special memories for me because it's on the clips when they pan at the fans celebrating, there's a 13-year-old me jumping about going mad, and my late granddad standing beside me just with his hands in the air. So that's a very special thing for me with Sproul. But
we speak about moments, like, again, referring to last week's, and we'll try. This is the exact reason why I wanted to do the two 21st century stuff back to back, because I knew that a lot of it would be linked. We talk about moments, we talk about players. When Liam and Craig were talking about games, that 3-0 for Ivan Sproul was, I think they ended up putting it 5th on the list of Hibs matches in the 21st century, just behind the natural order, the 6-2, the 5-1 cup final that we won, and the 3-2 Scottish Cup. So it just it holds its weight in gold. And those types of games and those types of memories and those types of moments, like we've already said, it's kind of what lasts and sticks with us. Billy, based on what the boys have put, there's not really a fighting case for you. But why did the boys laughed when I said Ivan Sproul? Why? What's the script there?
For me, I remember when Ivan first signed, Hibs in the programmes used to have this like question and answers part, and one of the questions was about music, and it says like, what music do you like? And Ivan's answer was, I get slagged in the dressing room because I like metal music, and all the boys are into dance music, and I was a bit of a goth when I was younger. So when I read that, I was like, that's my boy. That's my boy. There's a mosher in the Hibs dressing room. He's my boy. And then he went on to score the hat-trick. And the thing about Ivan is, as Craig was mentioning, Wesley, Grandad, I would go to games with my dad. And I remember all these games, every time Ivan ran up that wing, you'd hear all the seats just batter up because everybody's just standing up. As soon as he got the ball, everybody's standing up, and you just hear every seat in the stadium just clamoring up. And I loved that. It was such a great feeling. He didn't always do some great stuff with the ball, but when he got the ball, you just knew, like, much like how some of the other players I've spoken about, you just knew there's going to be chaos. It's a great
point you make, though, about the seats. It's a great point. I actually couldn't tell you the last time I heard something like that. And maybe it's something that I'm now used to, and now that I just hear all the time at games. But you saying that is just brought back, like, you can just feel the memories flooding back. I'm sitting in the famous 5 lower. Ivan Sproul gets on the ball, and you just hear the seats hit the back up as they're coming up. Like, I don't know if Craig Cam, I don't know if you agree, but I don't think you hear that kind of noise anymore. I don't know if it's because you've got like the section singing and a lot of people are now naturally just standing as well.
Nah, because you're normally hearing "fuck's sake" over the top. Yeah, I mean, these type of players, Sproul, obviously we've spoken about Boyle. These are the players you go and watch. Why you go and watch football? The excitement. All right, they're flawed. And as Craig said earlier, and the phrase that we don't like to use, but is so true. There's guys here that wouldn't be at Hibs if they were the total package. And I know you were joking about Eli Yuan. He's another one that falls in. How anyone can criticise a guy that's got double figures for assists and goals in a season for Hibs. Craig, when was the last time that happened with a Hibs player?
Stevie
Dunno,
Mallon.
but he doesn't pass enough.
It was Stevie Mallon that done it, but I don't know who done it before that.
You probably go back to somebody like Riordan in that.
Yep.
Maybe 04, 05.
Assists though, he wouldn't have
Aye.
had the numbers on assists.
I think he would have.
We'll need to get a fact check.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm now
he,
curious. But I had a nosy because when I noticed, because it was when the fact came out about LAUM, and then someone asked, well, when was the last time somebody done that? Like try to be cheeky in regards to like it happens all the time. And then Stevie Mallon, I've tried to have a look back. I couldn't find it, but your memory is much better than mine, Craig. So you're probably right.
I'm not saying it definitely is, but when you think back to that period with Riordan, he took most of the set pieces in terms of most of the corners than anything.
Yeah.
I think we've done Riordan a bit of disservice with the heavy Griffiths and Boyle and Sproul chat.
Well, he's technically he's not been announced in anyone's starting 11 yet, so we can give him the Derek Riordan 11 when we come on to that. Craig, you've told me your two non-negotiables when it comes to attackers, so I'm going to leave that for a sec, and we'll come back to that. Billy, who did you have on the left-hand side?
For me, that was Riordan. He was so much better coming off the left for me than he was up front on his own.
And we talk about attackers, very topical again, not tracking back, but being able to produce in the final third. I'm not comparing the two, but they're two very technically gifted players. For me, Derek Riordan is one of the best players I've seen at Hibs. He could strike it 30, 40 yards right, left, top bag. His goal collection is absolutely ridiculous, and there's a reason why he's held in such high regard. And then you've got someone who doesn't pass, didn't track back in the current Hibs side, and people are putting him down as like the worst player of the season. That for me just doesn't make any sense. But like I said, I'm not comparing the two. Callum, did you have Riordan on your left as well?
I did, yeah. Riordan didn't have social media to deal with, I suppose, as much as I know it was about later on. But and when we're coming to managers, I've got a point around that as well. But yeah, Riordan for me, and talking about his goals. I mean, the one that obviously that everyone will go to is the one where he cuts in from the left, curls it in past Craig Gordon against Hearts, just phenomenal. And he
does
was
that like later on in the season as well. Like the one that you're on about is into the away end, I'm assuming, and then later on in the same season he does it into the famous 5 end, but with his other foot.
That was the following season.
It just kind of sums him up.
That was the following season.
But
I know what you mean when he takes it down the line past Nielsen. Aye,
and then
left
bang.
foot. Aye. Yeah.
It just goes to show like the levels, the ability that the player had.
Yeah, and it's just that excitement when these guys get on the ball, and that's why you go and watch. As soon as the ball goes to their feet, something might happen, even if they've had a bad game and they've done nothing all game. I mean, the example of that, I know we're not talking about him, but LAUM had not a good game against Hearts this year and scored a double in the space of a few minutes because he's got that in his locker, and that's what these guys had. They can do something out of nothing.
And Craig, I'm assuming you had Riordan on the left-hand side as well.
Yeah.
With Griffiths through the middle.
Griffiths through the middle, aye. I swithered on, again, formation-wise, it doesn't make sense, but when I first done my three was between Boyle and Fletcher. But Stephen Fletcher right wing doesn't really work, does it?
No. Billy, who did you have through the middle?
This one is the one that I've actually got 3 names written down, and I've went for Gary O'Connor, but underneath it I've got Fletcher and I've got Mixu. And the reason I've got those 3 players is because I think they bring the best balance to the squad that I've picked. But
so you don't have Griffiths in yours?
He was my potential right winger if I wasn't allowed Ivan. But no, I didn't have Griffiths.
Billy has a front three of Sproul, Riordan, and O'Connor.
That's right.
Alan?
Through
the middle?
Griffiths.
Tell you what, we've collated a tremendous starting 11, that's for sure. I'm looking at it now, and I'm just going to run through some of it, right? And Billy, I'll give you the opportunity to tell me to fuck off or change it or whatever, right? But this is what I'm assuming the combined agreed starting 11 that you boys are going to come up with. So we've got Marciano in goals, back four of Gray, Sawsey, McGregor, Murphy. Midfield three, Brown, McGinn, Latape. And this is where Billy might shout at me. A front three, Boyle, Griffiths and Riordan.
That's
You
horny.
know what? I wouldn't be adverse to giving him Sproul. Again,
Would you,
like you say,
Callum?
when you talk about
think
when
of
you
the
talk
likes
about
and
these
retweets.
boys, when you talk about these boys that get you off your seat, like when I think back to that era with Sproul, Riordan, and O'Connor, like you were probably never sitting down. So I mean, I'm happy to concede Sproul. I think Boyle's a better player overall, but I'm happy to concede Boyle for Sproul because I think they're very, very similar in terms of the excitement that they bring.
Callum, any last words before you kind of make the deciding factor on that?
I don't really want to be as nice as Craig, but okay, I'll fold as well.
Jeez, oh, lads. Jeez, oh. Right, okay. Now, some absolutely tremendous players getting dropped, so to speak. Now, for the 0 listeners that will care, Andrew minds up earlier. I went 3-5-2.
I was close to that, by the way. I was very, very close to a 3-5-2.
Now, my non-negotiables were Marciano, Whittaker, Sawsey and Murphy, Brown, Latape, Griffiths and Riordan. They were my non-negotiables. So that only left 3 spaces left. And in those 3 spaces, I put McGregor, Ambrose and John McGinn. So
we're not far off it, by the way.
We're not far away.
Not at all. The only reason I went 3-5-2 was I thought Riordan and Griffiths up top as a 2 with Latape in behind gave us a better balance if I had Whittaker and Murphy on either side. I know Gray was really, really good at going forward, but I was thinking more about ability rather than anything else. And listen, if I didn't put Latape in there, Craig's right, I would have had Kevin Thompson in there. So back 3, back 5, whatever you want to call it, Whittaker, McGregor, Sawsey, Ambrose, Murphy, midfield 3, McGinn, Brown, Latape, and a front 2, Griffiths and Riordan. So yes, although a lot of the players are similar to what you boys selected, it looks a long way off at the same time. So are we happy with that now? Does anyone want to make any last shouts, disagreements, arguments? Looking at you, Billy.
I just want to defend my choice of having Gary O'Connor. I think if you're going to have Riordan in your team, you need to have O'Connor. The chemistry they had and the link-up play they had together was just beautiful to watch.
You could say the same about Griffiths and O'Connor as well, though.
Not to the same level for me.
No, but more like recently, like the level of the pairing that they had at that point. God knows, like Craig, you said earlier on, the amount of goals that Lee Griffiths scored. Imagine the season before if we didn't have either of them at the same time.
Aye, no, you're right.
So final agreed 11: Marciano, Gray, Sawsey, McGregor, Murphy, Brown, McGinn, Latape, Sproul, Griffiths, Riordan. These are done no bad, boys. These are done no bad. So some of the boys that are in there that I've missed out that you have selected, you've got Rob Jones, Effie Ambrose, Martin Boyle, Boozy, Kevin Thompson, Whittaker as well. So these are done very, very well, boys, that's for sure.
It's hard. Like it is really hard to try and proper nail it. I mean, there is some that you probably think are, like you say, the non-negotiables. But then there's the ones where, like, it's one of those ones where we're kind of, if you think about it, like in the forward areas, very light on a proper right winger. But you've got the choice of maybe 5 or 6 that could come off the left.
Yeah.
Like there's that season under Yogi where for 6 months Stokes was unbelievable. 6 months Liam Miller and Kevin McBride in the middle of the park were incredible.
Untouchable. Right.
So it is tough.
Like you say, like until you mention it now, we hadn't even mentioned Anthony Stokes.
Yeah,
single-handedly greatest individual performance I've ever seen by a player. Not just live, just in general.
Yeah.
Man possessed that day. Not enough to obviously get in starting 11s, but will be in many, many other people's. You've got a midfield three, Scott Allen, McGeoch, McGinn, who more recently will be in a lot of players' starting
somebody like
11s.
we've not even spoke about Zamama. Like
Yeah.
even Fletcher's barely had a mention. Mixu scored. We're talking about that 6-2 game. Mixu scored the hat trick. We've no spoke about him. Like it is tough, and I do think a lot of it is nostalgia bias as well. Like Billy says, his memory for Sproul isn't necessarily anything that Sproul done, but it's that feeling of the clanging of the seats going up. Again, it is heavy. I'm a fucking nostalgia merchant. Like I love it, so I can see where.
But you could sit there and say it is nostalgia bias, but then you would normally associate that with something that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. 2-3 years ago, you're talking about Martin Boyle coming back, and that's why Martin Boyle was in your starting 11. Do you know what I mean?
No,
I know nostalgia. You could go back as far as the cup. Do you know what I mean? And select just most of that starting 11, which is why some people would have Conrad Logan in there as well. So it does obviously play a part, but we'll spoke about it moments. That's why you remember certain games. That's why you pick certain players. I mean, Billy's picked Ivan Sproul because of his music taste, and then it just kind of grew from there. So. Aye, no, he's done well, that's for sure. Moving on to another topic, managers for said starting 11. Now, the managers I sent you, I know the down the slope boys done a manager, a top 5 managers recently, and that was very debated on their episode as well. I felt it rude if we're doing players, we may as well not do a whole episode on managers. That's kind of why we've done the whole player aspect of it. But it'd be rude not to talk about some of the managers that we've had over that time period. I did narrow it down to 4. I don't know if that would be your top 4. I wouldn't not necessarily say it would be my top 4. But I sent you Alex McLeish, Tony Mowbray, Neil Lennon, Alan Stubbs. You've still got Jack Ross would maybe be in there for certain individuals as well. And that's not even mentioning the spell that we had under John Collins or John Hughes. Do you know what I mean? So, Craig, who did you have as your top manager? I think it goes without saying with the conversations we've had in the past, and I don't think I'm going to be surprised with what you're going to say, but who would you have as your top manager out of that list that I sent?
It's very, very close. Like, it's very close because when you kind of associate your football memories to when you first started going. So when I first clicked with football, I'd been going to games during the relegation season, but I didn't quite get it. Whereas the season after, I went home and away, and that was the start of me going home and away for a good, 10, 11 years before I missed a game. So McLeish, obviously, and I remember that era where we were fucking dominating Hearts as well. It was class, going into school, slagging all the Hearts fans because we'd beaten them again. But I can't forget how that Mowbray team made me feel so what, 2004 he came. So I was 13 playing for Hutchie Vale. I was a left winger. Riordan comes on the scene and just takes off. Like everything about that team. And it was like it's funny when Callum said, I know what Callum's meaning about social media, and I know exactly who he's referring to, because it is Mowbray, because Mowbray took absolute tankings of Hearts as well. That when you look back to last season with Lee Johnson, for example, folk were baying for his blood after we lost 2 games that on a flip of a coin could have went either way. Whereas
especially the second one.
Yeah,
the second one definitely could have went the other way.
You probably forsake the game against them in the cup at Hampden because we were fucking decimated by injuries. We just sold O'Connor to Moscow as well. But I know that Mowbray team, you didn't care if we were going to. The Dundee game, ironically, is the one that stands out. We're 4-1 up. There's an incorrect call for us to go 5-1 up. I think Riordan was called offside. He was miles on. and we end up drawing 4-4, and folk are coming out going, that was fucking amazing.
I've got that written down as well.
Like, that was unbelievable. Even we got clapped off the park. I'm sure his actual first game was Kelly at home, and Chris Boyd scored a free kick that day, I think. But you look at it, he couldn't have got off to a worse start. We got pumped at the Inter Total Cup by a group of farmers. Great away trip that was as well. But I just that journey that we went on with Mowbray, developing these youngsters, sprinkled with guys at the start like Grant Brebner, Gary Caldwell, Ian Murray, Boozy, even for a period of time as well, Michael Stewart when he was signed. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea. But that was a very, very special time to be a Hibs fan for me. So it's very close, but Mowbray.
He made some big decisions as well, eh? You mentioned Brebner. Like, Brebner was the captain, and he dropped them and sold them, and like everyone was shocked at the time that he'd done that.
Tam McManus as well, thanks.
Tam McManus.
Billy, who did you have as your... And the reason why, Callum, I'm going to leave you because I want to hear your rant, I want to hear your point, I want to know where that's going to go. Although Craig's obviously already touched on it. Billy, who did you have as your number one out of that list?
Yeah, I've gone for Tony Mowbray as well. Similar reasons to Craig. I think when you think of a Hibs team that you really associate your time supporting the club with, for me it was that Tony Mowbray team, which reflects on a lot of our selections on our players. I think the thing that for Mowbray as well is not very often a Hibs manager will leave and still be well regarded. A lot of the time they are sacked because they've underperformed at some point or something's gone wrong, where he is still highly regarded despite some bad results, because other than one bad spell at Celtic, he's gone on to become an absolutely incredible manager everywhere he's went. And I listened to you guys talking to Kevin Thompson, like all these players that have nothing but high praise to say about him. Like, he's so well regarded, where I don't know if you're going to get the same reaction from players if they speak about Stubbs, because for Stubbs, I think one interview that they were saying that he was just more your pal rather than your manager. And then when you had Neil Lennon, you never knew what side he was going to get, whether you were going to get an arm round you or a throttle round your throat. Where with Mowbray, I just think he was just the perfect manager at the perfect time.
Callum, are you going to reiterate that?
Yeah, full house. I remember where I was, and obviously we're going back 2004, as Craig says. And I remember I was down in England at the time, and I was sitting. My mate had a pub, and I was sitting on his pool table with Sky Sports News on in the pub, and it just came up. Hibs have announced a new manager, and it came up Tony Mowbray, and I was like, who? Like, I kind of remembered him from his Celtic days, but not. It felt totally random. And even the Inter-Total game that Craig mentioned, I still remember then. Was that not the one where it was absolutely pissing down?
Yeah, the bottom corner next to the famous 5, that didn't recover for
that was right in front of me, that corner.
Yeah,
that was right in front of me.
Absolutely horrific rain that
there was
summer.
There was no way that game goes ahead if it was a normal league game. Like, it was only because they had come over and they probably couldn't afford to come back another day. And even with the rain that was on the pitch that day, I remember thinking, "Oh Christ, we're trying to play football here. Like, try to move the ball around." And then the big one, as Craig's already touched on, was the Dundee one. Like, chucking a 4-1 lead, you can just imagine how that would be treated now. But came away, everyone just like thinking, well, we've got a team on our hands here. Like, really impressive. We beat Celtic and Rangers with style. I think he probably had the best win percentage if you take away Stubbs as well. Like, Stubbs, all these seasons were in the Championship. I think Mowbray probably edges them as well. But yeah, I think the reason I was probably swithering between Mowbray and the others was just on that side of stuff. Mowbray made some big mistakes at Hibs as well. The biggest one probably persisting with Zibby Malkowski, and he
gave him a 3-year deal and then fucked off to West Brom.
Gave him a 3-year deal, and my cousin was good mates with Alan McGregor, and Alan McGregor was signing for Hibs. It'd been agreed through the club that he was leaving Rangers because he wasn't getting anywhere near the team. He was coming to Hibs. It all been agreed, and Mowbray vetoed it. Said, well, no, we've got a good enough goalie, and kept Zibi Malkowski. So there's what we ended up with instead. And then, yeah, the social media thing, I honestly wonder if he would be held in such high regard, or even if he would have survived as Hibs manager without getting sacked, if it was in a social media age with the defeats we took against Hearts. I mean, I've never seen Hibs. I was living in England when we beat them 6-2. I've never seen us score more than 3 goals against Hearts. They must have got to see them score 4 goals against us, about 4 times in about a year and a half, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I don't think a manager would be allowed to get away with it now. I don't know, Craig, do you think he would survive now if it was?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, you can only see how quick folk turned on Jack Ross when we were finishing third. Do you know what I mean? We finished third and got to a semi-final and a cup final, and folk wanted him at the door. Granted, I was one of them, but that was obviously, when you think about that, it's that frustration of how good that season could have been, third, and we should have really won 2 cups.
Yeah, watching St Johnstone win a double doesn't help.
We should have. But no, he definitely. I don't think he would have. Especially the 2, because I'm sure the first derby at Tynecastle, we got. No, do you know what? It was the season. It was the second season. It was the second season where they got Romanov.
Right.
Romanov came in because the end of the first season, I think it was still Robertson in charge. Maybe I could be talking about my arse. But it was that second season where the first derby at Tynecastle was Scatchell's first game, and that's when he scored and done the celebration.
Right.
And then we beat them at Easter Road with Boozy and O'Connor.
Yep.
And then I'm sure the next one was at Tynecastle where we got beat. Again, that was with Ricks. So I think that was the Mercer game. The Mercer game when everybody turned their back, we lost 4-0 or 4-1 that day. And then obviously we lost in the cup to them 4-0 a few weeks later. So they seen 3 4-goal scalpings in the space of 9 months. There's no way he would have survived that.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be allowed to happen.
No.
Just touching on what both of you have said, before we move on or bring this section to a close and look at the weekend's game and move forward as well. You've touched, both of you there have made really, really good points about social media and players not being able to, not playable players as well, because we've touched on Ellie Ewan as well, haven't we? Never mind Rocky Bushiri. Managers not being able to live or keep their job for any longer due to social media. Obviously, the club have came out and admitted that the Jack Ross sacking was wrong and that they shouldn't have done it, and they pulled the trigger early. Billy, Callum, I want a name from you, both of you. Since the Jack Ross sacking, if we didn't have social media, which one of those managers that we now don't have in charge do you think should have maybe got more time? And I guess you can include Nick Montgomery because he's on a maybe not with the board at the moment, but with the fans. There's probably more fans wanting rid of him now than wanting to keep him. Billy, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think we should have gave Lee Johnson more time. That's a joke, by the way. I'm probably. It's hard to tell. I don't think. I know the club came back and says that Jack Ross sacking was premature and they should never have done it. But at the time, I still stand by it. I think, and this probably comes down to the fact that we were watching a lot of the games from home, and we were like, this was a big point of us during lockdown, is we had lots of group chats and we would sit and blether with each other during the games, and you'd be spending more time in a group chat blethering away to the boys than actually watching the game of football because it was just boring. Whereas, like,
I'm sure did we not used to go on Discord and have somebody host the game? And we'd all sit and watch the game. Well,
it would be a nightmare because there'd always be that one person that'd be 10 seconds ahead of you, and you'd be like, yes! You're like, for a throw-in. And then you'd realise, oh no, that's a goal. But yeah, I don't think Jack Ross was that good, personally. I think letting St Johnstone win the cup is just, for me, that it's tainted his legacy. A third place finish is great, but it could have been so much better. And
would I be right? Would I be right to assume that you would feel a lot more differently if Celtic or Rangers went and lifted the cup, either of the cups that year? Is it
probably.
because St Johnstone won both of them? Because obviously we were the strongest in both semi-finals. It goes without saying. But if a Celtic or Rangers went on to lift the cup, would there be that, right, okay, well, maybe it's not so bad. We should have got to the final.
Yeah, probably. I think as well it comes down to the big chances missed as well. When you think of like the Jackson Irvine miss, you think of the Jamie Murphy miss. St Johnstone weren't good in these games. They were there for the taking, and yet we couldn't get over the line.
It's the Hearts semi-final as well that rankles for me, given that because they were in the Championship at the time,
that one.
they weren't even able to fucking train, and they turned up and they outperformed us. But there is an element of, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if Montgomery was to go, a very, very big clamour would be for Derek McInnes, who, when you look at it on reflection, Jack Ross is very, very similar in terms of, folks say, the football's boring under Ross, blah, blah, blah. Boyle, Dodge and Nisbet got over 50 goals between them the season we finished third. You're no boring if you're, I know there's elements of the game that are shite, but you're no getting 50 goals at your front three if you're no playing some version of attacking football. So I think for me, in a non-social media age, Jack Ross is probably still the Hibs manager, if he's not been poached to go on to something better elsewhere.
Love it. Completely agree. Callum, any lasting thoughts before we move on?
No, just I do agree with that. You think that first period when we finished third, it was all about win at all costs under Jack Ross, and then the second season we started unbelievably. Like football-wise, you're watching us going, now we're seeing what Jack Ross wants as a football team, and then obviously Kyle McGuinness made a glass. That's kind of where it all went wrong. But you could see, and I think he got sold up the river. I think that's where we've been needing a centre half since then. And we've never went out and got the moment. Although to be fair, we did actually sign a centre half under Hecky, didn't we? That probably would have
Adam
been
Johnson.
Good if it
Jackson,
sorry. Adam Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't think I would have. I don't think Maloney or Johnson, and I get the mick taken out of me for sort of being quite positive and giving managers
Callum's
longer.
always the last off that get the manager out train.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would say that neither of them deserved longer than they got. I think Maloney was totally out of his depth, and Johnson, you can't go, even after Luzerne, you can't go losing those opening 3 games in the league. The way we played. I mean, the Luzerne game was great, but then we saw what happened in Andorra. Over there, the way they played, just some awful performances. So no, I wouldn't have given either of them longer, and I probably would have given Jack Ross a bit longer, especially when we just got to a cup final.
I think as well, Sean, just before we do move on, the two that we've obviously no mentioned in Stubbs and Lennon, it's very, I think for me, their two tenures are very finely balanced based on events that happen. Like obviously we've got Stubbs with the cup, but if he had, I know if you hadn't had Bosch, you'd be your uncle, but if we hadn't won the cup, he would have got chased because we'd failed in the Championship for 2 years. And then Lennon, that season in the Championship was turgid. The first 6 months of the season back in the Premiership, give or take. But that last 6 months with McLaren and Canberra, with McGinn, Boyle, Scott Allen, Dylan McGeoch, like those, it's very easy how you can look back on an era because of a certain period of time that was class, when the majority of it was shite.
Yeah, totally agree.
No, I completely agree. I think, see, even if you look at those managers, if Alan Stubbs would struggle to get in my top 5, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, I mean, you only need to see, he went to Rotherham for a few months, failed. I don't even think he lasted a month at St Mirren. And when were they in the Premiership at the time when he took them over?
took over. Did he take over from Ross?
Yeah,
think
because
Was it Jack Ross that took over
remember, Craig,
so
they slagged them.
Ross had got them promoted because our last game of the season was against them and we got promoted. So Ross the following season then took them up. Aye.
But remember,
then
the
I think
St Mirren chairman came out and said we're aiming for top 6, and Stubbs basically said we're not good enough for top 6. And
but I can't remember if Stubbs almost set in a rot, but I can't remember if they got relegated after it and then came back. No, was it not? Did Stubbs not take over for Ian Murray?
He signed loads of players anyway, Stubbs. He signed.
But anyway, like it speaks volumes, I think, now that Stubbs doesn't have a job, and the only job that Lennon got near was the Celtic job, and that was purely because of circumstance. And he's not had a sniff of a job since.
Yeah.
I mean, Mowbray would be top for me.
Yeah.
So it goes that goes for all the same reasons that you have all said. Mowbray would still be top for me. Stubbs would struggle to get in the top 5. Like, I've never been a more angrier person than I was after that Falkirk defeat the week before the cup, or whatever it was, before the midweek before the cup. Like, I lost my shit like I've never lost it before in my life. Built up frustration from the League Cup final, the first playoff leg, and then going into the second one as well. Like, I went into that cup final with absolutely no hope. Like, I was just like, I literally couldn't care anymore because of everything that had happened so far that season. So, like, yes, it gave me the greatest day of my life and gave everyone arguably the greatest day of their life, but it's everything else that brings him down for me.
To caveat that though, Sean, to caveat it, we played about 57 games that season. Like, see that second half of that season, and he also got us to two cup finals. I know we lost the League Cup final, but the number of Premier League teams we beat on the way for both cup runs.
His record against Hearts was pretty good as well.
Record against Hearts, that we had all those games. I just, that second half of the season, we had games every 3 days. Like, we lost the League Cup final, and then we were up in Inverness 3 nights later in the replay for the Scottish Cup. And then obviously, I mean, I don't know what would have happened if we had beat Falkirk, because we were meant to play the first leg of the final on the Friday night or the Thursday night, and then the second leg would have been the day after the Scottish Cup final. So I don't know. Maybe Alan Muir was never going to give that penalty for that very reason.
I will say this about Stubbs as well. Like, the recruitment under Stubbs was phenomenal. A lot more hits than misses. Players that went on to become legends.
I think if you actually drilled it down, I think it's because the hits were so good. It covers a lot of the shite with Stubbs.
There was a lot.
I get your point though, Billy. But when you look at it, so if he signed McGinn and McGeoch, they're not just hits; they are fucking hits.
Yeah.
Whereas he did sign a lot of shite.
Frank the JJ.
And although we had been relegated, though, he did have a clean slate.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of pressure on him. Well, obviously, there was still pressure for us to go up. Of course there was. But to touch on Billy's point, the players that he's brought in were really, really good, and they were hits as well. So it gave him, because they were so good, it gave him that maybe leeway with other players that maybe came in, and maybe that's why, obviously, he's held in such high regard, obviously, with the cup win as well, but with the transition that he oversaw at the club as well.
Yeah, no hard to say that. But I do think when you look at it as well, football is very, very sliding door moments in terms of, like Callum says, we go up to Inverness 3 days later, we overcome the replay, and then Mark Oxley gets booked for time wasting, but he dropped his contact lens.
Yeah.
And it's weird how that is, and when you look at it, that is such a minimal thing to happen, but then that snowballs and we get Conrad Logan and
I still don't think
all the rest of it.
I still don't think we go up and beat Inverness if we win the League Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And we probably don't win. We probably don't beat Rangers if we go through against Falkirk.
Yeah, because you don't know how that's going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of things in playing out, we played out at the weekend. Done very, very well. to an extent in regards to recent performances. 3-1 win for the Cabbage at the weekend. Does it matter? Probably not. Were we ever in risk of getting dragged into a fight at the bottom of the table? Absolutely not. Were people shitting the bed beforehand? Yes, they were. Does it matter now? No, it doesn't. But what does matter to me is the fact that it would have been easy at the weekend for a lot of those players, loanies included, to not turn up, not perform, or not perform to the level that we would expect from them. But they did. Billy, do you think the level of performance that we got, regardless of the fact that there was no pressure on them, if they'd lost, we still would have been gunning for blood? Do you think it helped the fact that there was no pressure, and the fact that regardless of the pressure or not, do you think that is what we could potentially see a little bit more of next season, if Monty's still in the role?
Well, your last point there is the key one. To say there's no pressure, I think, undermining the statement that the club came out and talked about Montgomery's future and the future, how they'll be analysing the season as a whole. And I think a lot of these players will be playing for whether it be a future at Hibs or a future elsewhere. Like your loan players, like Marcondes is out of contract for Bournemouth at the end of the season. He doesn't know where his future lies, so he doesn't want the last 6 months of his career at Bournemouth when they're at Hibs being a poor one and a letdown. He's going to want to be fighting for either a move to us, which probably won't happen, or a move elsewhere. And in terms of other players, like it was great seeing Paul Hanlon score. Probably might be the last goal he scores for us. There's 3 more games of the season left. So he's another player that's came on and is fighting for either a future with Hibs or a move elsewhere to show that he's still got it. So like, a lot of these players have still got things to play for, and they're professional, so I don't think that they're just going to down tools. What I will say about the game at the weekend was Boyle had so many chances through on goal, and their goalkeeper saved almost every one of them. So he should be the top of our transfer list for the coming season.
Well, I'm just touching on the weekend as well, and kind of touching on the statement I mentioned to Craig actually in the group chat that these kind of things, to my knowledge anyway, happen naturally at the end of the season. Clubs always do reviews regardless of how you've performed. Do you think there was any weight? I asked Tony the same question last week. Do you think there was actually any weight behind the statement that was made, or do you think it was more just to try and calm the frustrations for the fans and kind of try and relax the fans a wee bit? Because clubs will naturally do a review of, maybe not to the extent that Hibs are looking to do in all levels of the footballing department, but they'll review the season, they'll review positions. It happens naturally at any club. How did you interpret that statement? And do you think that level of reaction is because of the statement that came out, or do you think it's maybe a mix of the fact that the pressure was off, or maybe the players were feeling the pressure a little bit more that they were able to perform the way that they did?
I thought it was a good statement, firstly. I think the club were damned if they did, damned if they didn't with it. I think you were always going to have people that either way were going to go, what we said that for, that's not Monty's out, or if they hadn't said anything, where's the words from the club? So they were never going to win either way. I think as you say, there probably is some kind of review going on. There's been murmurs for a few weeks about Brian McDermott moving roles and a technical director coming in, which was confirmed last night at the Hibs first event. That's going to happen. So I think that these things were happening anyway, but particularly because of the new investment, Black Knights. I think next year it was always going to be about next season and what we could do in the summer. I think bottom 6 will definitely have exacerbated that. I think one thing that came from last night that we might change, because part of the big sell at the shareholders meeting was all the stuff that was going to get done at East Mains, the new facilities that were going to get built, the dome and everything. From I don't think he would have said it last night if it wasn't probably going to happen. From Kensal last night, they're going to pause that stuff and put the money into the playing squad this summer. Now, is that because we finished bottom 6 and revenue means that revenue is down because we're missing out on games against Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, or whatever, and positions in the league and a possible European place, or is it purely, we need to put extra money into this now to improve the squad? So I think it's probably a bit of both. I think there was definitely going to be a big review anyway because of the Black Knights, but I think bottom six definitely would have pushed that on with the pressure that's been put on Monty. As for Saturday, for some reason I went along and it was actually ended up enjoying it. And I think, yeah, as Billy said, I think there was pressure on Monty's got to go out and perform in these last 5 games. Kenzel said last night that his position is being reviewed and Montgomery's position is still getting reviewed. So, you know, Monty could win 3 or 4 of these games and they might still decide to replace him. We saw what the Black Knights done last year at Bournemouth, and it proves to have been successful. And a lot of people didn't think that was the right move at the time. So I think what we've seen is Monty's got to perform these last 5 games, even though they're meaningless games. And he managed to get the players to do that on Saturday. St Johnstone, by the way, were absolutely honking, possibly the worst team I've seen this season. But mind you, Livingston. But still, we still had to go out and perform. And I think coming away from the game, we were better than I realised at the time. The chances we had were unreal. And talk about moments. That Marcondes free kick, unbelievable. The technique for that free kick, just phenomenal. And I thought Boyle was a bit better as well than he has been more recently. I know he missed a few good chances, but he got into good space. He was running at them and stuff. So improvement from there as well. And my leader was unbelievable. So no, I think there was pressure on the team and fair play to them for going to do it. Hopefully they can keep it going over the next few games. I know that there won't be interest as much as it would have been in the top 6, but it'd be good to get a decent run together and see what happens when we get into the summer.
Craig, having a look at the weekend result and maybe looking forward, maybe not just the Ross County game, but in forward in general, can we look a little bit too much into that result? I know we're bottom 6 anyway, and I know there could be a big overhaul of players in the summer anyway, but you've got boys who are potentially still going to be there, or Mariah Welsh, for one, for example. Lively performance that he put in, I thought was really strong as well. Obviously Paul Hanlon, whether it's his one of the last games or not, Lou Stevenson closing in on 600 as well. We're still getting strong performances for players that are not only going to be here next season, but are more than likely not going to be here. How do you think that could potentially unfold, and could we maybe read into it a little bit more between now and the end of the season?
Nah, I don't think so. I genuinely couldn't disagree more with the other two. Like, in terms of the pressure side of things, like, we're now effectively playing 4 glorified end of season friendlies for me, and it's very easy to turn it on when you know realistically you can talk about the players having pressure and the manager having pressure, but there's for me anyway. I don't think there is, and it says a lot that when there's nothing really riding on it, that you can go out and put in as comfortable a performance as that against a team that should be given everything because they're fighting for their lives. But 2-3 weeks ago, when the pressure was on and we needed the result, their arses collapsed. Now, I'm not saying I would never question a player's effort or their work rate. I don't think that's fair, especially when I've never been in that environment. I don't know how hard they would work. So I would never do that. But in terms of maybe their application and their attitude, it's when you play the same opponent that quickly after it and you get 2 such contrasting performances, one where a lot was on the line and one where absolutely jack shit is on the line. The fact that we won so comfortably on Saturday, I think speaks volumes. And I do think what Callum says is right, though, that I do reckon that come the end of the season they'll probably go through these, whether we go 5 on the bounce, 4 on the bounce, 3 wins, 2 draws or whatever. I still reckon there's a strong chance that Montgomery doesn't last beyond the end of the season, because again, you've got the case study with Bournemouth last season. Gary O'Neill done, on the face of it, done incredibly well, and they've went, Ken Watt, Bolt, got a lot of flack for it, and then I think that Ariola's just got their highest ever Premier League points tally. If I'm not mistaken.
Since the end of October, they've won the 5th most amount of points in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So if you had a Premier League table for October to now, they would be 5th.
Yeah,
It's like 42 points or something ridiculous like that.
And it's very much, I've never bought this bullshit that we're in charge. They have a small say, but ultimately it's our club. Nah, the billionaires don't put their money in to be consulted on things. I know the probably club will have to keep it above board and say, no, it is, there's only a minority investment, we're in charge. But you're not telling me that Bill Foley and the consortium that he represents aren't going to the club and going, what the fuck is going on?
Do you think I don't want to go off on a tangent here because we've had this conversation and I've brought this up before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not think the Black Knights maybe played a part in Nick Montgomery even getting hired in the first place and Lee Johnson getting sacked? Because although it was never announced, there was talks of a takeover of some kind for a long time, and the Black Knight interest had been there for a while as well. So, like you said, billionaires don't put their money in unless they want to have full control to an understanding. If they're talking about putting billions into a club, well, not billions, sorry, millions into a club, we currently don't have a manager. Do you think they maybe would have actually influenced it way back then? And now maybe they're like, maybe it wasn't the right call, and now they'll review it.
If you want to draw, try and find a link where it would be, obviously Bill Foley's had a keen interest in the A-League because they've got their Auckland expansion. So, whether Bill Foley's just the literal voice box and then it's obviously a team of folk working together, the A-League's obviously a market that they're well exposed to, because I'm assuming that these talks about starting franchises or whatever, it's not just a case of, fuck it, let's phone the A-League and see if we can stick a team in New Zealand. This will be a long-term planning thing, so that they'll probably have had interest in the A-League before Montgomery was ever even the first team manager at the Central Coast Mariners. So if you're looking for a link, it could be. I don't think that. I mean, you can look at probably the club for the past 18. I mean, you look at the club since. You can kind of draw parallels to when things started going pear-shaped. When you look at maybe when Ron maybe started getting to the point where he was focusing more on his recovery at the time rather than the football club. And then obviously we had that period where he passed away, and then it was like he passed away. The review for the sporting director took 6 months. We then got McDermott at the end of last season. Like, it was very much scattergun. Probably not, I would say probably mostly caused by Ron. Maybe, obviously, we don't know how serious his illness was, but the fact he went for issuing a statement to passing kind of indicates it was maybe more serious than what he or his family initially would have believed. So it's maybe not against the grain to say that the Black Knights were, for the very beginning, saying, look, we know this guy. And it was just pure coincidence that we knew about him because of, obviously, Cummins being at the Manors. If Cummins isn't there, I don't think anybody pays as much attention to them as what we did, and what certainly obviously you did, because when the shout came about for when Johnson got sacked, I'm not throwing this back in your face, but you know what I mean, you put me on the hype train. Yeah. And I wish I was still on that hype train, because I just we'll not fully go into that.
I'll assume Callum's still on the Monty train then, considering he's always the last to jump off.
No,
already.
He got off at Haymarket a while ago.
Yeah.
Ticket for one, please. Moving on to listener questions. Yeah, we've already touched on this. Keith Robertson sent a question, and I wouldn't say that we're back, because, by the way, I worded the tweet by saying that we're back and that we're the great entertainers again, obviously tongue-in-cheek, for those that didn't understand that. But yeah, Keith said, wouldn't say that we're back, but we demonstrated how good we could be when we attack and apply pressure. Not pressure on the match, but pressure in the game. The sooner we confirm safety, which I don't think was ever in doubt, we can look ahead and plan for next season. How raging will Levine be? So hopefully he'll be even more raging soon. If he loses a couple of other matches.
You've just broken an 87 long streak Because what's the first question we always ask, Sean?
I did forget about John, if I'm honest.
Wouldn't have
My
happened if I
sincerest
was
apologies. You know
hosting.
what? I'm gonna leave John to last. I'll pay him the respect to putting him last rather than first, since I've forgot about you, John. Kev Wilson, build the attack around Dylan Vente will score 20 or 30 goals next season. Yes or no? If we get the midfield right and we can build it around him, does he score 30 goals, Craig?
No. Doesn't
All
score
comps.
30. Nah. Nah, I
Craig?
don't think so.
No? Callum?
No, I don't think he's got enough about his all-round game to do that. He's, you know, the players we've spoken about very real. I mean, did Griffiths just hit over that in that one season? And we're
I don't
talking
think he
about
even got to 30. I think he'd almost got there.
28?
28, I think it was.
Well, there you go.
Aye.
And we're talking
Yeah.
about the best season of a Hibs striker we've seen in 25 years. So, no, I don't think he would reach that.
15 to 20 though, for me, definitely. I think.
Billy?
His finish on Saturday was great.
Yeah, I think you're taking all competitions into consideration, considering we're going to be in the group stages, the Betfred, then there's a possibility of getting round about the 20 mark. But I think 30 has been overly ambitious because, as the boys have mentioned there, to get to that level, it's normally like our elite strikers, and even like any other striker in Scotland getting to that, like they need to be having an absolute incredible season and the team having a great season. And we have no idea what kind of investment is going to be in the club in the summer, so you never know. But I've not seen enough from him this season to suggest that he's that all-round great striker that's going to get us those goals.
We spoke earlier on about Lee Griffiths scoring goals from absolutely everywhere. On the other side of that coin is probably a Jason Cummins who only scores them in the penalty box and in the 6-yard box, and that's probably what Dylan Vente is. Do you know what I mean? You just keep him in and around that area. Gav Dick, good result, should have had a lot more goals, extremely poor in front of goal, but how good was Paul Hanlon? Surely he could stay for another season. Do you agree? And again, we spoke earlier on, topical. I wasn't surprised that he comes in, performs well, scores a goal, and now all of a sudden everyone wants to keep him. Again, I mean, good Hibs man to have around, but we spoke about it already. The club shifting away from players like that as well.
He's still the
Do you
best
think-
centre half at the club, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I completely agree.
And
Completely agree.
if we're going through this period of transition where guys like him and Lewis are leaving, and we're leaving Rocky, where Rocky's our only signed centre half for next season, it
Gotta
leaves
have
a
a good
big
plan in place.
gap. And I still think that, and it's a damning indictment as well, that for me that Paul's still the best centre half that we've got, because Wilt Fish has regressed massively.
Yep.
Triantis is one of the worst I've ever seen. Bevan was one of the worst signings ever.
Who might come back in the summer?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But nah, for me, if we're going through this period of transition, and obviously we'll not go into here saying what we've heard, but for the reason that Paul's leaving, allegedly, is laughable, in my opinion. And if he goes where I think he's going to go, it'll be very interesting to see people's reactions.
Very cryptic, Craig, for those that don't know. Billy, would you keep him another year?
Probably not, but it's not based on Paul as a player or a person. It's more my excitement levels of what we can bring in with the money from the Black Knight Group. For me, it's the great unknown. You know, we could bring in something that's absolute like rubbish, or we could bring in like, you know, the next coming of Sozzy, for all I know. And that to me is
Or
exciting.
Sol Bamba and Effie Ambrose?
Oh,
Thiago Silva's just announced he's leaving Chelsea.
that's the thing. I think how fun this summer's going to be with all these rumours and announcements that we're going to get. It's going to be a great laugh. I can't wait for it.
I'm glad someone's looking forward to it.
To
And we end
Craig's
up
point,
finally
Certainly
signing
I'm
Jamie
not.
McCart.
yeah, to Craig's point, we're going to need, if Hanlon leaves, we're going to need 3 centre halves in the summer.
Minimum.
So if you keep Hanlon for another year, which I would as well, it gives you that continuity, experience as you're bringing other players in. So at least you know you've got Hanlon there. But I think the ship's probably sailed now anyway. I think he fancies maybe a season in Europe.
It's going to be some laugh next season when we go into the Betfred group stages with Rocky and Del Ferry as our centre halves.
Definitely will not be
Fucking
attending any of those
Denny,
ones.
man. Fucking hell.
Colin McClellan confirmed that he wore Leaf 7 to a funeral. I'd like to know a little bit more about the context behind that, Colin. Thank you very much. After what was yesterday's at the time performance, who of the current loanees should we try to keep? Now, I'm just going to narrow it down to Marcondes or Malida. Which one of the two would you keep?
Malida.
And why?
1,000,000% Malida.
Malida.
Like it's not even a contest for me. Like,
yeah, I think for me, Marcondes is clearly has a lot of ability. Technique is exceptional, but going back to what we've spoken about earlier on about players that excite you and just his directness and his power and my leader for me. I don't think we'll be able to keep hold of either of them. I think Hertha will be looking for a nice sum of money in the summer to move him on because I don't think their manager fancies him anyway. So they'll be looking for. I think they paid. Did they pay 6 million for him or something like that?
I think it was 8 million euros. So whatever that would convert to.
So they'll be looking to recoup at least some of that back. I would have thought, which we're not going to pay more than maybe 1 million or so now, are we? I don't know. Maybe it becomes our record signing, Billy. There you go. Maybe that'll be a.
Billy wants a pacey winger as a record signing for Northern Ireland. He listens to heavy metal music.
That's it. That's all I want.
Adam asked us, and I want to get your take on this as well. I don't know if any of you have seen it. I'm hoping you have, hence the question as well. The goal that was chopped off, and Rock ended up getting booked for it. Do you think the goal should have stood?
No, he stood across him. He did 100% stand across him inside the box, so it was the right decision.
I've not seen it.
All right. It's one of those, Craig, where goalkeeper goes to clear it, steps in front of it, it's hit off Rocky's ankle or whatever and went in the goal.
Rocky makes that.
Like when a keeper goes to clear
right
a goal
across.
like a kick.
Oh, right. All right. Don't know.
It's one of those.
All right, son.
It's not like he's just ran out. It's not like Rocky's turned around and just ran out and the keeper's kicked it up his arse. When you look at it back, Rocky steps right across the goal
from his hand, from picking it from his hand. Oh, right.
And as he's kicked it, it's hit Rocky's ankle and then went in. Right, okay, so we will end where we normally start the questions, John, before you fucking start abusing me. He said it should have been 7, and it's hard to disagree with that. If you have already had it, what did you have? If you haven't had it, what are you having for tea, Craig?
Burgers, I think. Well, it was 2.5 hours ago, but it might have regressed like a pot noodle or something by now.
Billy?
I think we're having peri-peri jacket potatoes. With chicken, obviously. Not just peri-peri potato.
When they put it past you, Billy.
Obviously.
The
Callum?
worst, I'll tell you what, right, can we just caveat this as well? This guy comes out with the worst fucking dinners ever. He has soup like it's porridge.
Let's
Chinese
not
meal
get
is
into it, Craig, because you've made this point before.
This has been confined to
and
a
we could
group
be
chat.
here a
Right?
while.
This has been confined to a group chat with 7 or 8 boys for a long time. But for the 12 or 13 that'll listen to us, they need to know Billy will end up on a register for his food choices. That's it.
I'm never going to outlive this chicken kebab I had during lockdown.
Oh dear. And the beigest Chinese dinner you've ever seen.
For your own sake, Billy, I won't get into it because I am curious, considering you said it was a chicken kebab, but we'll move on. Maybe that's a topic for conversation
it was a fucking
whenever I see you.
Bits of shredded chicken on a bit of bread, man. It was fucking with nothing else on it.
Callum, what are you digging into?
I had lasagna for my dinner and it was lovely.
Good choice. Solid. I like it. Right, boys, that is us. Thank you very much for joining. Thanks very much, Billy and Callum, for coming on. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope everyone that has listened isn't still shouting at whatever device they are watching or listening to this on, with the starting 11 that the boys selected. Get in touch, let us know what you would have changed or what your starting 11 would be as well. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you all have a good week.
Do you know what, right? See, for a laugh, Ken, what we should do when maybe on an international break, the 4 of us again, but we'll do the worst Hibs 11.
Oh, I've got that penciled in, that's for sure.
Aye.
Got that penciled in, don't you
I'm
worry.
keen. I'm keen.
Because that could
Aye,
be
definitely.
serious. There could be serious scraps with deciding who's shiter.
As long as Rowan Vine's in the team, I'll be happy.
As a man that appreciates a good beer,
Shelton
though.
Martis, centre half.
Hey,
If
we
I
got money
speak-
for him.
Listen, if I speak, I will be in very, very big trouble.
Right, boys, have a good evening. Everyone that's listening, have a good one. Catch you later on. See you
Cheers.
later.
Let's get ready to rumble.